Okay, very well. So continue from that presentation. This one is the second of the tri-weekly presentation for that independent study. Um, I think for this one, I would like to go quick. I mean, I just reviewed the content, and they seems to be pretty updated for my own liking, for my personal sort of argument. So I think I won't make a lot of changes for this one, and it's gonna be short and sweet. And so the 3 points that I'm going through for today is the first, the working condition of data annotator. So although we have this idea of like, AI, smart, um, it's a lot of its success or result comes from human labor, and not just the designer, but also the one annotating or feeding data into training models. Uh, I would focus on that point, and the second point, I would go through three approaches to altering uh, a pre-trained model. Essentially, what would companies or uh, sort of private sectors, those who want to market from AI, would do to fine tuning or to um, sort of customizing the model to fit their business. And this whole, as you can see, the two things are pretty sort of private, would pretty focus on the sort of training. And actually, they're from my personal experience working within the um, uh, private sector. And so it would bring me to the third question, and it subsequently later turned into my capstone, which is why do we keep comparing artificial intelligence to human? Yeah, pretty sick. So, well, the first question when we ask, obviously, uh, is why do we have to care? Why do we have to look into the working condition of data annotators? So, a very simple answer, you know, they're human. And with the current condition, can be roughly described as exploitative. We know that exploiting human is wrong. And so that's why we have to care. Okay. Uh, so here I have the notes. I would read from that and I would add more. So when I was at Bard, I talked to the first author of this paper, this one, towards fair and pro-social employment of digital peace workers for sourcing machine learning training data. And so essentially, the paper studies the uh, sort of experience of annotators, labeler, those who create data uh, to feed into training models. And this discussion sort of kickstarted the whole independent research and subsequent my later bachelor dissertation. And so the paper mentioned about Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is this website on the screen, which is a crowdsourcing marketplace that allow individuals to work remotely on small tasks to earn a small amount of money. And the main point of this paper is to advocate for those people for more comprehensive and respectful communication between this group of very freelance, lack of protection workers and the employers on those websites. I will explain this type of. I would go. Essentially, I would go into more detail about what those annotators, what their jobs include. Um, so the advantage of this platform, or the whole point of this platform, is to crowdsourcing cheap labor for tedious or small tasks, and it would create remote jobs. It would create cheap it would sourcing cheap labors, and essentially the employers are from the sort of more developed countries, and they would benefit from the exchange rate among the countries. So here you would have learned more, and if you click onto that, it would lead you to this Amazon SageMaker Ground Truth. And this one, I think it was created later, specifically for training AI. And so, um, what exactly is annotators or annotation? So, their job is to label data, and uh, they're they are they got paid to train generative pre-trained transformer. That's why the that explain the wordplay here. Ouch. So these tasks of labeling seems to be low cognitive. They require low cognition. It seems mundane, but now, and I mean, at least the time that I presented this finding, the task has become more sophisticated, and they also hire people with master or PhD uh, degree. And the picture here is the original Mechanical Turk. You have a machine, an automata that would play chess with human. Though it seems that that machine is smart, it's actually controlled by a human underneath the board. And here, I was talking about. I was supposed to present this uh, article before, the this article about America must win the AI war. And though it's a very interesting framing, I think I would talk more about that in later in my capstone. But for this presentation only, I want to point out that the guy who wrote this, who would book this advertisement spot, is actually the CEO of Scale, and one of the sort of child company from that is Remote Tasks, which is also something similar to Amazon Mechanical Turk, like an annotating agency essentially. Um, so we have here lots of feedback. I sourced this from LinkedIn. And they talk about the architecture of the platform, not just this one, but also Amazon Mechanical Turk and more. Encourage a toxic dynamic where you have a requester and worker, sort of a very unbalanced dynamic between them. And there are lack of degree to protect the privacy and the security of those workers, and they don't really have features that would accommodate workers with impairment, and sort of talks about uh, language use, talk about lack of information about uh, the jobs and why certain tasks submitted would be rejected. And so here I want to point out a very crucial aspect of this outsourcing, this sort of remote task. That is the uh, sort of the worker would submit their response to a task, and it can be accepted or rejected. If it's accepted, the worker would receive a certain amount of money. However, if it's rejected, it would hurt the worker in the future, where they would be recommended to less jobs. Uh, yeah. And I also want to point out that treatment varies among companies and the scale of data that they are required to annotate. And so I know that at least uh, there are one agency in Vietnam that sort of opened for this type of annotation, and uh, through my like very short experience, very initial and short experience with them, they have a pretty decent working environment. So this critique only applied to Amazon Mechanical Turk and Remote Task. Here, so my experience working with them sort of also bring out this one observation, moving sort of beyond the annotator a bit. So I actually, when I present this slide before, I was met with questioned from a comp sci professor because this slide essentially talk about the sort of this blurred transition between preparing data for training and deploying model. And so, from my experience, it seems that uh, like for just in very initial like rolling out state, what the model output would rely a lot, if not rely entirely, on the data annotator. And so here we have this sort of misconception from the client who used the service, thinking that, oh, what they receive is actually only from the model itself and not from the annotators. And so they would assume that, oh, the model is pretty smart. Whereas the one that is annotating, that is continuously preparing data and essentially giving out the information that is presented to the client, would say that, okay, the model would perceive that, okay, the model is not that smart. And so here it's just a very blurry line of regulation, where you would sort of have the acknowledgement or the misconception of the model, and it just continuously, uh, of course, for their own sake, the company would not talk about their annotators. So it just keep feeding on this um, like vicious cycle of invisibility for the annotators. So in the original presentation, I go through three types of training after you have a model and how you can apply it. You can sort of use it for your company. Though I think my main sort of emphasis would be this, not about the how this group use it, how they continue training the model, but I just want to point out this effort from Singapore, where they hope to create this Southeast Asian languages in one network model, where it's trained mostly on Southeast Asia data, though the result is debatable. So yeah, this leave me to not that, but the whole ordeal leave me to a question, that why do we keep comparing AI to human? So throwing back from my observation from the book by Melanie Mitchell, it's obvious that human intelligence and artificial intelligence are different kinds. So why would we keep comparing? And this comparison is not just in the private sectors for like marketing sake. It's also appear in textbook, in research paper. And so why are we keep doing this? That is the question for my capstone research, and I would hopefully talk more and be able to give a more detailed description explanation of why this is the case. But some points I can point out now is to the as I mentioned from the previous presentation, the initial aim to build machine from the image of human. And it also, that sort of initial um, desire sort of lead through in the field and continue to live on in the field. Now, though you have major stakeholders like OpenAI. They define AGI as only satisfying economically valuable labors and not simulating thoughts. And so, even though the definition was redefined, even though not every line of research followed this desire to simulate human, there are still they still exist. This analogy uh, as I said before, because of the initial desire. And I think the second point is that we as human has always been so accustomed to understanding things to metaphor. That is, we apply comparison like mine is a machine or like time is money, etc. And that metaphor sort of map the conceptual field of one thing into the other, where the conceptual field or the character, the features of human being mapped onto AI, not just in how we build them, but now how we infer them. So that will be hopefully what I will talk more in my capstone. Yeah, that's just it. And thank you for listening.